Thanks for tuning in to the Illuminations Podcast. We love having you here. It is our mission to be a beacon of light on your journey towards conscious and mindful living. In our weekly episode, we bring you inspiring change makers in the field of spirituality, healing, personal growth, and wellness who share their insight and expertise so you can navigate your way to a happier, healthier, and more purposeful life.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Illuminations World Podcast. I'm your host Nia and I'm back with you with another episode. So I wanted to start with a little story about myself. So not many people know this about me, but I used to be a marine engineer before stepping into this world of holistic healing and hypnotherapy. So I completely understand how hard it can be to make this transition because of all the stigma and the fear of failure that comes with it. So I wanted to invite a guest who can talk to me about when it's okay to be a quitter in a don't give up world. She will be sharing a little story about herself and how she made this transition. And I am sure it's going to be absolutely inspirational. So I would like to invite Miss Arpita. Thank you so much for joining me today. So for those of you who don't know Arpita, she is a holistic therapist and a corporate wellness facilitator at Illuminations Wellbeing Center, dedicating to assisting all her clients to uncover their hidden blocks and patterns that are deeply embedded in their subconscious mind. She focuses on deep healing techniques that empower her clients to be free to choose and embrace a life that they aspire towards. Thank you so much, Arpita, for joining me today. How are you today?
I'm doing very well, Nia. Thank you so much for having me here. It is just amazing because the topic in itself is probably the story of my life in the past, in the present and future unfolding probably. So it gives me great pleasure to be here with you today. And it's a pleasure to share my journey. Can't say, as you said, it's not always easy. But yes, I am a firm believer that change is important. And sometimes the start may be a little rocky, but it gets better.
So let's dive a little bit deep into that. So you weren't always a therapist. So let's start with that. So what were you doing before that? And how did this happen? Tell me everything about it.
So yes, I wasn't a therapist or wellness wasn't the first choice that came into my life, or I didn't make that choice much earlier in my life. I studied economics. I did my MBA and I worked with the corporate sector close to 15 years. And actually, I worked very happily. So I really enjoyed my job and I was blessed to be with organizations and people that were just fantastic. So I really have no sob story to give that I was miserable and I moved. To the contrary, it was the other way around. But I think, there comes a point in time when, and that's what we talk about conditioning, that we are probably hardwired and conditioned in a way that we have to grow up, we have to study, then we have to find a job, and then probably find a partner, and then maybe get married, and then maybe have children. And I think I had started to tick off those boxes, and one fine day you realize, and then what? I think that then what turned out to be a big then what in my life. And as I said, it didn't come from a place where I was worried about work or frustrated with work, but a lot of things happened at the same time. And work was at the peak, which was a very successful time of my career in the corporate world. I gave birth to my twins. So there was a lot of stuff going on, the personal stuff. And I was plain and clear exhausted from inside. Not because anything bad was happening, but too much good was happening at the same time. And
is that even possible?
It is, because, we are trained, and we train ourselves to tick those boxes. And once you tick it, for me, it was like, now what? And even after achieving that, it wasn't that I was peaceful or happy from within. It was always like, what is to be done next?
Interesting.
And that, I think, got me thinking. And that was the turning point of my life when I quit, which is our topic today, because the word quit has probably a negative connotation to it. When you say I quit, it's almost like I gave up, which means I was weak, which means I wasn't good enough. So there is so many layers to this word, and I today speak very openly about it, that actually, it's just a word. It's just how we look at it. So I literally quit. And the only thing I could quit at that time was my job. That was the only thing I could barely afford to quit. I couldn't afford to quit any other aspects. So my quitting began with that. And I quit and I didn't do anything for another year. Or if I think that's what it was, but there was a lot of probably inner work happening at that time. And that's my brush with the word quitting. And then you realize that actually it's nothing good or bad. When I say quitting means what? I'm saying no to you. I quit means I'm going to go away, which means I'm also saying yes to something else at the same time. So every no that we say is a yes at some other level, but we don't see it.
Oh, I love that.
It was the first time I felt it's the two sides of a same coin, where when you say yes to an opportunity, you were saying no to many others. And when I said no to one thing, I said yes to many things else. I kind of neutralized the word quitting, I guess, in my head, that it is not related to being weak. To the contrary, I think you need to have a lot of courage to quit, because it's a label, right? You're a quitter now. You quit something that was so nice. It was working. Then why did you quit? I quit because I realized I was a hamster in a wheel. And I didn't want to be either a hamster nor stay in a wheel.
Yeah.
So it depends. And that's my take on quitting, because quitting doesn't mean necessarily that something is wrong. Quitting doesn't mean that it's over. Quitting doesn't mean that you can never return. Quitting means at that point of time, it doesn't serve me anymore. And I still have things to learn, explore, and do. And I had no idea, Nia, at that time that I would come into holistic healing.
Wow.
It was just when I cleared the space. So quitting for me is also making space for new things to come in. Like how we are sitting here in this room. Now you have a setup. Now if you want to upgrade your setup, you first have to throw the stuff away.
Wow.
Cleanse the room, and then order, and then they will deliver, and then you will put it in this room. So for that 1 year, probably I was cleansing, clearing space for the new to come in. And the new that came in was hypnotherapy, was family constellations, was all this holistic journey.
Yeah, but how did you, because when you say the word quit, there is a very strong attachment of failure, or this fear of failure. So can you talk a little bit about that? Why is there so much fear around failure?
Because we are equating two things. One is quitting to failure, and then we are equating that failure is not a good thing. So coming down to basic conditioning, and this is no one's fault, or this is not to point fingers, but the fact remains that we get programmed, our subconscious mind gets programmed in the first 8 years of our lives.
Wow.
And the rest of the lives, we are just repeating those patterns, those belief systems that we have picked up. Now imagine if a child is taught, and we are all taught in different ways, to stick to things, finish what you've completed, starting from, the vegetables on your plate, to your marriage later, to your job. We are told there's some kind of glory attached to not quitting. It's almost like, I'm so exhausted. I have these 10 roles that I juggle with, and I'm wearing that badge, I'm wearing my exhaustion as the badge of honor. So it's a very deep conditioning when it comes to these words, which means failing. We live in a dual world where there's always judgment. So success is good and failure is bad. Yeah. And quitting comes under that list. When you quit, you're not strong enough, you're not good enough, you give up too easily, you will not go far in life. These are all very ingrained belief systems. Hence, it is very difficult to break out, because it's just not you, it's your support system. It's actually the people who love you, care for you. They are constantly, in their own way, reinforcing it, saying that you better finish what you started. The question is, when is it enough? When do you know that I don't want to run the race at all? I want to run a different race. It's like I'm playing football, and now I feel I'm done with football. I want to go and play cricket. When is it going to be enough to quit football so that I can begin cricket? For me, it's that transition, and it is not easy.
Wow.
You get questioned from all angles, and I did.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about that, because, from economics and the background, the corporate world, to a more holistic healing, that must have been rocky. That must have been...
Yeah. Initially, it was rocky, because when people ask you questions, you can answer them when you know the answer. But at that phase of my life, I didn't know why. I just knew how to navigate, but I had no answers of why. And why these questions come is they come from the premise of either two things. Either people will be like shocked and they'll say, but I thought you were such a balanced, intelligent individual, and how could you do this? Premise one. Premise two is, it's a tantrum. You have everything going in your life and you have blown it up. Or it is self-sabotage. You have everything going for you. What made you? And each of the questions jolted me because I didn't know. Oh, am I sabotaging my life? Or am I throwing a tantrum? Or any of these. So my journey began when I started to work on myself. And I have worked with therapists. I came to know about hypnotherapy. It intrigued me so much. I enrolled in the course, which today I practice and I also teach. So it took me a while. Like I won't mince my words and say it was, like my spiritual awakening came and it was such a blissful space. It wasn't. It was very, very rocky, but I just didn't know what else to do. I was on that path and I had to stick to it for survival.
So when you say stick to it, what made you stick to it? Because again, it's when it is rocky, you could have gone either direction.
Correct.
So what exactly made you stick to it?
The answer to that question, in just a few weeks back, I was in Switzerland. I was actually in Montreux, and walking down the lakeside, I saw this sculpture by one of the famous Austrian sculptors, and it's called Ecce Homo. It depicted two things, the two concepts of vulnerability and dignity of human beings. And I stood there, I even took a photo of when it was translated into English and what it means. What made me stick was I was beginning to find that true courage is being in that vulnerable state where I literally had no answers. I didn't know how to be the best mom for my twins. I had quit my job. I had no designation, no identity per se there. And that space of being very vulnerable and accepting that, I'm totally vulnerable at the moment, but that is not at the cost of my dignity. So when I saw this sculpture just a few weeks back, I'm like, now I know why and what made me stick to it. So you see, sticking to it and quitting as again two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
When you're sticking to something, you're quitting something else.
Wow.
And things started to shift. It's difficult to explain in words, but things settle down and life becomes a little more effortless. It's almost like, it's okay. Let's see where this leads to. So that's how I stick to quitting and didn't quit this journey.
So what would you say are some signs that perhaps someone is going through this phase, or perhaps it is time for them to look at the other side of the coin? Like what would your advice be for people like that?
I can only say about my journey, because each of our journeys are very different. When you face a stagnation, like as I said, things were not bad, but it was almost like I used to ask myself, is that it? Like once you have a family, you're married, you have kids, you're working well, and you have the money flowing, is that it? If that question comes, then it's definitely time to look. It could also be that there's no stagnation, but there are major events in your life. Like for me, I had lost a very dear colleague to cancer where I worked previously. And that shook me because I knew this person to be the healthiest, fittest person. And then he was gone in 4 months. And then you question again on the bigger purpose of life that, is this it again? What else could you do? And I don't know. And a part of me was die-hard optimist. It still is that there is more to life. And all we need to take is that leap of faith. Somebody's going to catch. If nobody catches, you're going to catch yourself, or the universe is going to have your back, but something will work out. So if you're in that zone of when you know that either this is not my life and I want to change it, or even if it is my life, but till when? Because again, coming back to conditioning, we are told, right, to stick to it. This is how we stick to our jobs, our relationships, our life, even when a part of us knows that it's toxic and it's not serving us.
So I was just thinking about, as you were talking, a friend of mine, he came to mind. So I've known him to be someone who's always changing careers, always changing his paths, always changing his mind. So I would also say like this idea of being okay with quitting, it can have a negative side as well, correct? So how do you balance that, or how do you navigate through that? And if we were to take his case, what do you have to say about someone like that?
Yes, because see, anything that we do, if it is becoming a repetitive pattern, that's where we need to look at first.
Okay.
So the question is, why do I quit? Or how many times do I quit? So it's the issue here with your friend is not about quitting the jobs. It's a deeper issue of how to answer your question of, how do you know it's the right time to quit vis-a-vis just repeat this pattern, is how do you feel after quitting?
Interesting.
So you quit and you feel great about it, and that great feeling should continue, not waiting for the next moment to quit, because then your friend is again sticking to the same thing. You see, it's the other side of the coin. He's actually sticking to a pattern of quitting.
Wow.
He's not quitting
yes.
the pattern yet. So how do you feel about it? It may be rocky in the beginning, it may be smooth in the beginning, but in the long-term view of 2 months, 3 months, 1 year, did that quitting action make anything move? Did anything shift in your life? Which means, are you more peaceful? Are you more happy the way things are? Maybe nothing changes around you, but are you more in acceptance of what is happening?
Right.
That inner peace is the only way I can explain when it is okay to quit and leave that behind and move on.
So, like how you just mentioned, it's a pattern, right? And just how every pattern, it's coming from conditioning, and whatever is conditioning, in whether it's based on society, whether it's based on habit, and so on. How does one break patterns? Can you give us a little bit insight about patterns and breaking patterns?
I'll take it one step behind. The question is, why should you break a pattern?
Yes.
So not all patterns are bad.
Yeah.
Not all our conditioning is bad. Not all our belief systems are shallow. No. We only work on patterns that I today realize as the adult that it is not serving me anymore. So for example, my corporate career served me well and beyond means at a certain time. We only look at these patterns, habits, or what we want to let go only when we have that awareness, and when we realize that, okay, it worked for me 5 years back. It doesn't work for me anymore. Why? Because I have changed. We are constantly evolving, and so is our environment around us. So when you are there, or your client is there, when they come and say, I want to get out of it, that means there's already a discomfort. Then we move. We don't go there and we don't say that we have to change everybody's belief systems. If what has worked for you, if what has worked for your society, your community, your parents, do not work for you anymore, that's when you quit. But I also think it is important to quit respectfully. I think that also helped me, because till date I have no, as I said, the good things and the bad things of the corporate world, but I don't have a disrespect towards it.
Okay, so really, what does that mean? What does that mean to do
means,
so respectfully?
The intent with which you start a journey will always come in the end. You'll come to that. So if the intent of my quitting is to blame my corporate job because I made wrong choices in life, I can be a holistic healer, I can be anything tomorrow. This journey will also bring me there. So when we quit, idea is to quit with neutrality. That you were important for me in the past, you served a purpose for me, but today, guess what? I need to move on. And it's the same when you're working and when I'm working as therapists, we say the same to our clients, right? That unless you are neutral, you cannot cut the cord, because you're still connected. There's still going to be blame game. So quit, but quit when you can be neutral about it. Don't quit when you're still, this is the example of your friend, where when you're in a pattern, which means I'm going to keep changing jobs, I'm going to keep changing partners, I'm going to keep changing cities, because I don't know what I'm looking for. But if you're neutral about it and say, guess what? And with the neutrality, let me take it one step deeper. It's the gratitude. Because the journey that we have had before is just not fallen on our head from the sky, right? At a very deep soul level, or at some level, subconscious level, we have attracted that. So we made use of that. And today when we have grown beyond it, it's not right to throw it in the bin. So we have to let it go, but let it go very respectfully.
Wow, that's said so beautifully, and I completely resonate with that. So what advice and what tips can you have for any of our listeners who resonate with this idea of being in patterns, and what can they do about it?
So first is, don't run for therapy and don't say, I want to break this pattern without understanding it completely. And that's where, mental health experts come into play, where therapists will actually help you understand. See, if you don't understand what you're running away from, you can never run away from it. So the first step would be to look at the pattern and say, what is in it me? What is there inside me that makes me quit job every 3 months? It's a little unusual, right? So work on what is below that layer. See, quitting the job or quitting a relationship or whatever pattern we are talking about is only on the surface. It's a behavioral thing that we can see. But below that there will be a core issue where it comes from. So identify the core issue, because if you don't work on that core, you can be in the corporate world, you can be in the healing world, you can go do philanthropy, it will still chase you everywhere. So for example, if my inherent belief system is I'm not good enough, which means I have to keep proving to myself, which means I'm the hamster. I will keep running to prove it to myself and to my entire environment that look, I'm the best hamster on earth. Nobody can run faster than me.
Because of this deep-rooted belief that I'm not good enough. So that's how your actions...
Correct. My actions will always be like that. Now, if I heal that part of me and I have that understanding that I'm good enough the way I am, if I'm a hamster, I'm good enough. If I'm a cheetah, I'm good enough. If I'm a human being, I'm also good enough. Then you are changing the paradigm. Now there is no hamster and there is no wheel and there is no cage. The world is open for you. Because if you carry the hamster from the corporate world into the world of spirituality, this is exactly what hamster will do. Hamster will fill up their schedule all the time, be busy with clients, look for validation. So it doesn't matter which industry you and I are. The idea is, where do I operate from? Am I able to quit that operating system? My defense mechanism. So when we are talking of quitting today, this is the quitting we are talking of. That it's okay to quit it when everybody is saying stick to it.
Okay, so what about for the people who find it very hard to let go? So it's not that they have the fear, but it's let's talk about hoarding or anyone who's holding on to too much, who does not want to let go.
Yes. So there are people, you're right, it's not that they're fearful of letting go. They are aware that it's a toxic relationship. They're aware it's a burden from the past. They can't let go because there is a hidden benefit to carrying that.
In what way?
In many ways. So, for example, say somebody comes and says that, okay, no, I can't let go of this pattern. Say this pattern of, choose a pattern, tell me any kind of clients that you work with.
Relationships.
Of relationships. So every time, it doesn't work out and I go in the same
pattern.
Now, I'm not saying it's for a particular reason, but from my experience as a therapist, there is always a very deep hidden benefit that we get when we are hiding behind our patterns. So benefit number one could be that when I am heartbroken or when I end a relationship, I get a lot of attention from other people. So now my mom looks at me and takes care of me and says, oh my God, my child is going through this. Or my boss at work will say, oh my, she's gone through a rough patch, so now let me be a little gentle. There will always be a hidden benefit to a pattern.
Oh, wow.
Now, when we work in therapy, in holistic sciences, we are actually helping clients to identify that for themselves. So, for example, somebody comes and says, I have this psychosomatic pain in my body, which doctors cannot, there's no medical reason to it. And it's been 30 years I'm with this pain. You can already hear in their voices that they're saying, either that this is never going to go, or I will not let it go, or who do you think you are going to work on my pain, which is 30 years old, and if the therapist is a young therapist, then you've not been born for 30 years. But if you hear this with compassion, what they're saying is, what am I going to do when my pain goes away? What is going to be my identity? So today with my pain, I have the focus of my children, my spouse, my neighbors, and my life is full. Now, if my body decides to let go of this pain, what am I going to fill that with? So to break the pattern is to find the hidden, not for us to find as therapists. We are guides. We can help our clients to find what is that benefit that they can give up. And consciously they can. And the day they decide to give it up, they have quit again. They have quit that pattern.
And open doors for something better,
more. Exactly.
More.
It's like throw the furniture out, get something new. I want to hoard because there's a benefit, I think. And then you want another set of your podcast setup. That's not going to happen.
Interesting. So let's say if someone wants to, they understand, they acknowledge it, they know, okay, this is something that they need to work on. What is the difference between going to a holistic healer like yourself versus going to a psychologist?
Good question. We answer that all the time, and thank you for raising it, because there's a lot of myth, around that these are diametrically opposite things. It's not. It depends on the person. Okay, none of these modalities are good or bad. So, for example, if there is something to do with the brain and there's a malfunction in the brain, there's a disease, that's when we are going to a psychiatrist for mental conditions, where medication is important.
Yeah.
And it's not that one is better than the other. Same for psychologists. A psychologist cannot prescribe the medication, but the psychologist has their own way through psychotherapy or any other modality where they're working on the hidden, reasons. Now, what fascinates me about holistic healing and why I chose this is because the word holistic means what? We are looking at a person as a whole, not just a body, not just a brain, or just not one part of it. We are looking at our clients as one whole thing, which has three elements. It's got the element of the physical body, which is very easy for us to understand. But just the body doesn't make us, right? We have the mind, which is which is driving us, what the intelligence with which we are living life. And then there is energy. You call it chi, you call it prana. What makes you and me alive vis-a-vis compared to our mic here? So it has energy in it, but it's not alive. Holistic healing looks at all these three aspects together.
Wonderful.
So, and we see the interconnectedness of what we think, how that affects our emotions, and how we emote, how that affects our energy. And when it affects our energy, we manifest that in the physical world or in the physical body. So I find it very integrative. Our approach can be like, we can approach a client from the level of thoughts. That's where we are doing the mind sciences. Your hypnotherapy comes in there, your NLP comes in there, all our mind sciences, your metaphor therapy. Then we are looking at it through emotions, tapping into the body of emotions of the client. And then you're coming closer to the physical body. When we say energy, we're talking of aura. Aura wasn't photographed 20 years back, but now you can go and get your aura photographed, get an analysis of that. We are getting into the chakras, the energy centers of our bodies, and understanding how the chakras are actually placed right above each endocrine gland, which means a thought that creates a negative emotion can block our chakras, which means our metabolism goes for a toss, hormonal imbalance kicks in, and physical body manifests a disease. So it's a different approach, and it's not that one is better than the other.
All right. So thank you so much, Arpita, for sharing that. And I truly think the journey that you've been through, and the wisdom that you've shared with us is just out of this world. And thank you so much for being here with me today. Unfortunately, our time has come to an end. I wish I could keep talking to you even more, but I look forward to having you back. So before we end this episode, is there anything that you would like to tell our listeners? Like any last words?
Well, I was thinking as you were saying, thank you for your wisdom. I think it's the other way around. I think I'm a forever student. So even when we speak like this, something comes up, and that's learning in itself. It's a journey. For ones who are trying to quit or thinking of quitting or have quit, I would just say, take it easy. It's not that, again, quit the pattern. You don't have to quit anything else, and be kind on yourself, even if nobody else understands your journey, but because they will, trust me, at some point they will, and they will support you. And reach out for help if you need. There are a lot of people around us. If you just ask for that help, those people, at least in my life, they appeared. My teachers, my guides, my mentors, my therapists appeared right at the time when I needed them. So ask for help, be kind on yourself, and enjoy life.
And where can our listeners find you?
Well, you can find me anywhere. You can find me at Illuminations. I work exclusively here in the JLT Center. So if you want to find me, you can contact Illuminations.
On social media?
On social media, I'm on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. You can feel free to connect with me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Arpita, for joining me today. And thank you to all the listeners who are listening, who's been with us for the past couple of episodes. And I look forward to bringing on another speaker with another episode, with another topic. So until then, take care, stay safe, and bye-bye.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love to have you tune in again next week as we discuss more engaging topics on relationships, health, career, self-care, and spirituality. If you'd like to help support this podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave us a rating and review. We'd be extremely grateful. To catch all the latest from us, you can also follow us on Instagram at Illuminations World or visit the Illuminations World YouTube channel for more inspiring content. See you again next week, and until then, live light.